Blog Talk Radio.
Christmas ain't for grown folk. No, sir, they had their time. They have stood underneath that mistletoe. They watched your logs flame. Ever mama, never papa, who have seen the reindeer fly. They know Christmas is for children, especially if they white. Merry Christmas, white children, on that blessed Christmas morn. Was no Negro in the crowd there when that little white boy was born. Merry Christmas, white children, and may all your dreams come true. Christ didn't die for no colors. His blood was shed for you. Snow-swept lanes and sweet mint candy, red ribbon all around, electric trains and dolls and dandies. It's all wasted on the ground. Presents wrapped in Christmas colors, overflowing scented sacks. This is only for white children, not them undamn grateful black.
Merry Christmas, white children.
Merry Christmas, white children, wherever you are.
On that blessed Christmas morn.
That morning so long ago.
Wasn't no Negro in the crowd.
There wasn't a donkey to be found anywhere. Oh, when that little white boy was born. Merry Christmas, white children, and may all your dreams come true. Let them have their February, 'cause December's just for you. Bang, bang. Went away for Christmas Day.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Context of white supremacy. Gus T Renegade in again. Program number 2 of the day. On the grind. Grapefruit juice by my side. On the grind. I hope those of you out there who are not participating in the festivities, or maybe you did participate in the festivities, hopefully, either way, you are tuning in for constructive information to combat all of the insanity that has been promoted all day today and leading up to today, Saturday, December 25th, 2010. We'll do exactly what I said. This is going to be roundtable open discussion on the Zeitgeist films, documentaries, I guess. I'm going to open up all of the lines. I hope people have seen the films. It's two of them, I guess, just to give a brief amount of information. Peter Joseph is the individual. I believe he's a white person. If anybody on the line, if I'm incorrect about that, please make sure you let us know. But I believe it's a white person, and he has these films that talk about religion, how religion has been used, how it's corrupt, and how it's been used to control people. They talk about 9/11 and the conspiracies around that. They talk about banking and how money is debt. They talk about homeland security. They kind of talk about all of these things, and I guess ostensibly justice, and all of the problems and war and violence, that all that could and should be corrected, and, things could be much better, ostensibly. There's supposed to be a third film coming out, I believe, in January of 2011. They already have trailers up for it, which I just find very strange. When this whole idea came to do this program, I didn't know that they had a third one of these films on the way. I didn't even know that there was a second one out. I find that strange. You generally don't have like sequels to documentary films, at least to my knowledge. If I'm incorrect about that, please set me straight. But that's kind of strange. At any rate, that's kind of a brief overview. I have linked the second documentary film in the description to this program. If you are listening at Blog Talk Radio, you can actually watch the film in its entirety. They got it online on YouTube and a couple other spots too. But check them out. I said from jump that I think if you are confused about racism, white supremacy, and you see this film, it can do a lot of damage. If you are more informed about racism, white supremacy, you can maybe pick out some of the constructive bits and see where it goes off the track. With that said, I will open the phone lines up, and everybody who called in, you can share. Feel free to hop in at any time. The number to call is 347-215-6071. The number again, 347-215-6071. We have done a phenomenal job keeping the background noise to a minimum. If we could keep that up, I would really appreciate it. If you know you're in a noisy area, just use your mute button. When you want to talk, go ahead, unmute yourself so you can be heard, and then mute your line. That way we're not picking up all the background noise if you know you're in a loud area. At any rate, everybody who called in, your line is open. You have the number. I'll give it out as we roll. Everyone who called in, your line is open. I will try to get titles so I'll know how people want to be referenced. The person who called in 1320, are you there?
Yes, I don't really have anything to say at this time. Thank you for asking.
No worries. How would you like to be referenced?
With 1320? Are you asking me?
Yeah, I can do that too. Do you just want to?
Oh, you could just call me
Marcella.
Ma'am. Yeah, Marcella.
Marcella. Got it. Okay. Marcella. Right on. Okay, Marcella. Person who called in 0775. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. You hear me?
Okay. How did you want to be? Yes, ma'am. How did you want to be referenced?
My name is May. You can call me May.
May. Gotcha. Thank you for calling in. Person who dialed in 4462, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. How did you want to be referenced, sir?
Black Murgatroyd.
Black Megatroid, got you.
That's the name I go by on.
I'm familiar with the title. I remember you, sir. Thank you for calling in. Person who dialed in, last four digits, 0106. 0106. Your line is open. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
You
can just.
How did you?
Oh, I'm sorry. You can call me Cynthia.
Cynthia, gotcha. Okay. 7012. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. How did you want to be referenced, sir?
You can call me G.
G. All righty. Okay. Everybody is here. I will announce as other people call in so they can hop in. Okay, on cue. 2203, and then she hung up. As people call in, I'll try to get them on and then kind of step back, but feel free, anything that you want to share about these movies, questions, comments, just, be courteous, no profanity, and I guess to hop in, I'm contending that I think this movie can be very confusing for non-white people if they do not understand racism, white supremacy. I guess that probably is true for anything, but I think this is an excellent example of what not understanding racism, white supremacy, you can end up in a lot of different places, and with regards to what you think the major problem on the planet is. Does anybody? How do you all feel about that statement?
It sounds accurate to me. I don't know if you caught me or if I'm even. Can I be heard right now?
Yes, sir. Non-Mighty Wick. My fault. Non-Mighty Wick with us as well. Yes, you can be heard.
Great. That statement sounds accurate to me. When I viewed it, I was thinking if I was more confused, it could take me a whole lot of time-consuming and energy waste, potentially energy wasting avenues.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am. Person who called in from a blocked number, your line is open. But the female, yes, you can be heard. Go right ahead.
Okay. When I saw that movie, I thought about all these conspiracy theory shouting Illuminati people and people who say the ruling elite as opposed to white supremacists.
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can be heard. Answer the folks. It's a lot of us on the line now. Yes, you can be heard, sir. And person who dialed in 0300, your line is open. But sir, yes, you can be heard.
Yeah, I agree. It can confuse people who don't understand white supremacy, but I will say that it can inspire people who are less confused about it to start to ask questions to figure out what's really going on. Because I used to be a lot more confused, but then when I watched the Zeitgeist, I started to get more Afrocentric and so on and so forth. And then eventually I heard people who practice the code talk about white supremacy. And so I connected the dots, and now here I am today. So it can help people, but it ultimately can confuse people, though.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of constructive, what I would call truth, in the series, in the two documentaries. There's a whole lot of that. I mean, I think you have to, in order to get people to go along, I mean, if you a quality deceiver or quality con person, you got to throw in a whole lot of truth to get a person to go along with, the whole package. So, the lies and deception in there too. So it's a lot of constructive information, but you can miss pinpointing white people as the problem if you watch this movie and are a whole lot more confused.
Well, I
7147. Sorry, I just wanted to announce 7147. Your line is open. My apologies. Was that Marcella?
Yes, I wasn't quite sure what they were getting at, and so it was a lot of information. And I don't think I watched the addendum. I watched the different Zeitgeist 1 through 56, and where they went from the banking industry all the way up through September the 11th, and I think the end result was just try to open your mind and understand. But what got me was I felt that their commentary on the religion and astrology and how many different religious people like Buddha and Jesus and so on and so forth, how they said that the stories had a commonality with the date, rise on the third day, virgin birth, and everything like that. But I found it to be entertaining. Yeah, I found it to be entertaining. I enjoyed watching it. And maybe I'm confused.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, there's one thing I want to say about the Zeitgeist movement, though. It's not actually just 2 films. It's 3 of them. There's an orientation film that does a breakdown of every single aspect of the Zeitgeist movement. And we need to mention the fact that it's not just films, but this is supposed to be a huge movement, or not a huge movement, but a movement around the whole Zeitgeist idea. There's supposed to be the Zeitgeist, and that's Peter Joseph's group, or ideology. And then there's John Fesco's group, the Venus Project. And I think that people should start to think more, probably having the discussion to the whole movement of the Zeitgeist thing. It's not just the films, there's a whole thing that's supposed to be going on along with it.
What is the thing that's supposed to be going on?
It's supposed to be like a consciousness shift in the whole of society. That's what they're trying to get at. To get people to recognize, I guess, the truth. But they never really say that it's white supremacy, though. They don't really address anything that has to do with race.
It didn't seem like
problems. Mm-hmm.
It seemed like they showed you a lot of different things, but I didn't see a concrete solution as to what people are supposed to do, other than I think I was watching the addendum, but like where he says the solution is technology or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I think, I remember he was talking about that in the orientation thing. So the orientation thing is more about like how to fix everything. And if you haven't really watched it, like I've watched the Zeitgeist and the Zeitgeist addendum and the orientation. I looked at all the stuff that they've done throughout YouTube and stuff like several times. I mean, it would take like more than one show to really cover all this stuff. It's not that simple to just having like one show about this. It would take like a black version of the Zeitgeist movement. That's ultimately, I think, the final conclusion of this whole thing should be that there should be like a black version of every single thing that they're trying to do, because I don't think that white people can be trusted to do a lot of the things that they're talking about doing. We should be the ones doing that anyway, because it would solve a lot more of our problems.
Oh, okay. I think I got a better understanding where you're coming from. But let me ask. You say you felt like that the movement part was trying to shift people's consciousness. Could you? I mean, I guess in your opinion, what people who like shift white people consciousness or non-white people?
That's the thing. I mean, he never gets specific about race. I mean, it's pretty much everybody's consciousness. It's pretty much everybody's consciousness, not just white people or black people. It doesn't really address the race problem.
I think that Zeitgeist is one of those pieces that kind of engenders the, hey, we don't need to talk about race or color. We're all in this together, and it's the elite, oppressing us all, man. We're all slaves to the Illuminati. I think it engenders that type of mentality after you watch it, because it does not point out that other than the elite, there are other people who support and help keep this thing going. And it doesn't address racism, white supremacy.
I would concur with that. It gets into the monetary system, and the elite want to make slaves out of us all, and it's just like the elite spent the money, and the people on the money are white people.
And a particular subgroup of white people, but some people get irritated when you go into that. But for me, the banking part especially, I mean, I got that because I understand who runs the banking industry, and it's not just the regular, ordinary white people. In particular, it's the Rothschilds, and
I understand that.
Yeah, and in particular, there's a very strong Jewish hold on that, and even the basis for the way it's run. I'm pretty sure you can find a heavy influence for that in the Jewish Talmud, but that was informative. The part on religion and there being multiple virgin birth stories, I had known that stuff even when I was a Christian, but I was a whole lot more confused. So when I was made aware of it, it was through like some Christian tract by like Chick Publications, and their conclusion on why there were multiple virgin birth deities and stories that came before Jesus is that the devil knew what God was going to do, and he was trying to foil the plan. Honestly, like, and that's seriously printed in some Chick Publications, like the comic book magazine. You can find those, and it'll tell you that there are different sun god stories and virgin birth stories and Tammuz and Mithras and stuff like that. But that's the explanation it gives as to why. Not that the Jesus story was possibly, a bootleg on those others and the Romans did it. It doesn't tell you that. But yeah, so I was a lot more confused back then. I kind of wish he had thrown out some books or something, or told you where to look to confirm a lot of that stuff, because I would like to read it for myself. I don't totally trust something just because it's in a documentary.
Well,
but it was very interesting.
If you look at the website,
if you look up a lot of Jordan Maxwell's work, he'll direct you to where to find out a lot of information.
Okay.
From Christianity beginning.
Do you trust everything Jordan Maxwell says?
Jordan Maxwell is a racist suspect.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you trust everything he says? Because I've seen him throw out a few things and say things on videos, and I look those things up, and I can't find that stuff to save my life. It's just he said some things that are pretty ludicrous.
He doesn't mention that black people are different than anything, too.
So that doesn't mean anything, but he will direct you to books that will that have proven to me to be amazing. I don't believe that nobody says black or white. It doesn't even matter.
Well, now that I'm talking out with everybody, to me it seems like they're pushing forward the culture of fear and this big idea of conspiracy and helplessness of all mankind. And they even go through that when they say the monetary system, the boom and bust, epicycles of the waves with regards to the monetary system. And what even got me also is when he was talking about the food system, and that it was evil people in the world who would destroy the lakes and the seas, and therefore making things such as water and food and things like that scarce. It seems possible because a lot of our lakes and seas are polluted, with oil spills and the byproducts of industrialization. But at the same time, you are right. I mean, even when they mention religion, they started going back towards the Roman times, and they hit briefly on Egyptian religion, but when they said what they said about the astrology, it kind of blew everything out. And, and it even implied that the original story did come from, and I'm ashamed to say, I think it's Osiris and Isis, but quickly started moving towards the Roman religion. And I don't really think any of our issues. Okay, so we want to fight the powers that be, and everybody else who lives, I guess, a pretty normal life is going to be enslaved. But how can we worry about being enslaved to the system, and we're descendants of slaves? Where does our concerns get met? And I think that was an important point that somebody made early on. You worried about being a slave to the system, and we're supposed to get scared, but what about the fact that we are descendants of slaves, and there's still a lot of things that hasn't been addressed?
The person who called in 4462, your line is open, so you should be good. Did anybody, in watching this film, I remember I saw it when I was more confused about white supremacy. Do you think if you're a non-white person and you are more confused, do you think you could watch this film and think that there are, quote-unquote, good white people, that is, white people who do not practice racism?
Absolutely, because you got the narrator of the film coming across as the guy delivering this message to you, telling you the truth about everything and opening your eyes for you.
Yes, it almost seems like a new religion, looking at those countries.
It's going to have somebody who's more confused looking, hard and wide for those good white people, to buddy up with and, end up trying to talk about the environment or animals or LGBTQ. I mean, religious freedom, they're going to take you anywhere except for getting rid of white supremacy.
Yeah, I think when the film came out and I first saw it, I think those were my Alex Jones days when I was listening to a lot of Alex Jones and watching his videos on YouTube and stuff.
I don't know if anyone ever looked at a lot of Professor Griff's videos on YouTube, but even then he goes into the same rhetoric, and you would read the comments, and you would see white people commenting like, oh, he's late. Jordan Maxwell already said this. Oh, he's taking his information from some white person. So it's...
That's suspicious right there, them doing that.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, that's a real sneaky, refined way of practicing racism. I mean, to sit there and talk about all the major problems with people on the planet while dodging the global systemic problem of white supremacy. I mean, that's like saying that white people don't mind being around non-white people and equally coexisting with black people in terms of power. That's totally dodging that when it's totally not. When that's a serious issue. White people don't want nothing to do with non-white people in terms of equality of power.
Yeah, they don't, but they're very good at pretending they do and trying to convince black people that we all have one common enemy, and that's the Jews. Sometimes I just have to sit back and laugh. I have a video posted on my YouTube channel about the Jewish role in slavery. Now, the book is downloadable. It's free. Yet it's amazing to me how many white people obviously don't read the book. And it seems like they quote David Duke, but they do it with this kind of Zeitgeist stuff too. But they find anyone to blame and make responsible to try to convince black people that it's not white people doing this to you. It's the Jew is dividing us all, the Illuminati's dividing us all. They're pitting us against each other, as if as non-white people in our everyday lives, we don't walk around and see white people who are not so-called Jews, just regular everyday white people practicing racism, white supremacy. Like there's not some invisible entity from somewhere else coming in and causing the problem. It's white people, but it's laughable how they assume that we wouldn't know that.
That's
why would we
old
even
school
be concerned?
playbook. I was just going to say real quick that's they've been using that play for the longest. You talk to white people about white supremacy. Even some of them will even go ahead and concede. Yeah, we're in a system of white supremacy, but you watch out for it. They're going to be looking to try to talk about some white people that's not in the room that's racist, or some dead white people or something like that, but they're going to distance it as far from the white people who are right there in front of you.
I guess.
Wait a minute. Person who called in 1786, your line is open, 1786. You should be in, and the number, if you want to dial, is 347-215-6071. The female that I interrupted, my apologies. Please continue.
No, I mean, it goes back to the feminist movement where we unify with a group, and then after everything was said and done, black women continue to be disenfranchised due to a racial system. And my question becomes, why should any person of color really be concerned with world government that has never really been a friend of any what's considered or classified as a third world country or a country of color? It becomes, like a lot of the callers said, a huge distraction from the real issue, you know.
Well, I say you should be concerned about it because that's another arm of white supremacy that looks to rule and control your life as well as non-white countries. But understanding that it's the white supremacists who run that and who aim to create that one world government, I think we should be aware of all things. But I don't think we should obsess over that so much.
Yeah, I guess my point is, like in the military, we say tighten our shot group and you know, aim for the bullseye. But if you're busy looking at moving targets ahead, you can't really tighten enough to hit the target dead on. Now, I guess what I'm trying to say is, no world government has ever been our friend. We know a lot of countries played a large role in slavery and continue to play a large role in the disenfranchisement of countries of color. And so while it's this huge movement going around with regards to one world government, when they were broken up in smaller governments was never our friend, why should I, as a black person, knowing what's going on around the world, be concerned with people who are in fear of being controlled by the man, and the man has never really been a friend to me or my brethren around the world. It's like getting distracted. I mean, you got to keep your eyes on the prize. It's like getting distracted from the real point. The real point is that we've been getting dogged out for hundreds of years.
The person who called in from 0414, your line is open. 0414, your line is open. And Tater Tot, she said that there is no country. She said white supremacy is world government. The one world government is white supremacy. White supremacy has no borders. That was from Tater Pie.
Hello, everyone. This is 1786. You may call me Nanny. And I wanted to get back to the Zeitgeist movie and the Venus Project with Jacques Fresco and Roxanne Meadows. They've created a town of the ideas that they have in this sterilized world, and it's in Venus, Florida. As a matter of fact, I believe it's up for sale. And I think that in order to consider Zeitgeist, the movie and all its parts, you need to as well investigate the Venus Project. And one of the issues I have with the Venus Project is overpopulation. And anytime I hear that word, I know that it is aimed at non-white folk.
Right. Eugenics.
Wow.
Can you share a little bit more about the Venus Project and overpopulation? Like, do they feel one of the problems is that there are too many people on the planet?
Yes, I can. What I understand the Venus Project to be is a development of property that's stacked and sterile and no violent crime. Humans are replaced to some degree by technology, even though it is kind of confusing. They use that as that idea, replacement of humans by technology, is one of the reasons before they're coming into existence. And Jacques Fresco and Ms. Meadows think that having this perfect society is the answer to the world's problems. And like I said, in Florida, they have actually developed housing, and they've been working on it for a number of years, housing that supports their ideas of all of these bad things that affect the earth, including the ecosystem. But in terms of overpopulation, I don't understand how they can stand on that as being one of the reasons to develop or design this sterile environment where there's none of the problems of modern society. Because from what I understand, my reading is that overpopulation is not a problem in this world. So I'm assuming that overpopulation has to do with white domination. Mm-hmm. There was a commercial, well, there were a number of them. Walgreens had these commercials, and I wanted to write them, but all of a sudden they didn't appear on television anymore. Maybe they're there. I don't watch much television. But they called the town Perfect. And one of the scenes, it was a football game going on, and all of the people were sitting in the stands and cheering, and the houses were nice and neat, and it looked crime-free and super clean, super sterile. And in the beginning, when I saw those commercials, there weren't any people of color, none. Non-white folk were nowhere. And then finally, the last one I saw, there was a little black boy. And those commercials have disappeared. And when I think about the Venus Project, I think about the Walgreens commercials. So I hope that answered your question, Mr. Gus.
Yes, ma'am. The person that called in 0106, your line is open, and I watched these films in preparation for the show, and I saw the Venus Project, and the things that came to mind immediately whoopsies. Muted my line. Sorry about that. Number one, the first thing that came to mind, white people have the technology and the ability to run the planet in a much more just and correct manner. I mean, the stuff that they were displaying, the Venus Project, and you have these trains, you could go, they were bragging, you could go from L.A. to China in 2 hours. You could go to L.A. to New York for lunch. Like, they're bragging about this stuff and all the technology and things that they can build. Like, and they were saying, we have the technology and resources. We could do this stuff right now. And I was just like, wow, it totally does not have to be like this. Like, all of the areas where you see black people suffering, starving, don't have resources that they need, that is absolutely unnecessary. The only reason that exists is because white people, I have to conclude, white people want it to look that way. And when I hear little things like the Venus Project, they think part of the problem is overpopulation, I gotta think eugenics. That's always what that has been associated with, white people looking to get rid of a lot of non-white people. And the caller, the person that mentioned all the additional, I guess, resources to help you understand Zeitgeist, the fact that they have all this material, they have hours of footage that's readily available, free online, and they don't mention racism, white supremacy. They're talking about all these evils, revealing all this information, and nowhere do they say racism, white supremacy is the problem. They'll show Rosa Parks, they'll show Martin Luther King Jr., they'll show the Klan, but no one ever comes out, system of racism, white supremacy. That lets me know a lot about these white people. Did anybody want to comment, or the new person?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
I just want to mention I'm working. I'm in my cab right now driving, so I can't concentrate like I want to, but I don't remember them talking about overpopulation being a problem. Exactly. They mentioned people asking questions about that, but they talk about scarcity more than anything. That's really what their big thing is, scarcity and abundance. Scarcity and abundance and automation. So I don't think they ever talk about that.
I was going to say,
Well, anyone at a computer can certainly, I'm sorry, this is Nanny, you can pull up the Venus Project, and on the home page, in the introduction, they say the problems of society, modern society, is listed overpopulation. That's on the home page in the welcome.
I may be incorrect, but I have to look into that. But I haven't heard them actually talk about that. I mean, I'm just, I'm just stating what I do know about it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but.
Well, I'm on the homepage, thevenusproject.com. I'm on the homepage, and it says the Venus Project presents a bold new direction for humanity that entails nothing less than the total redesign of our culture. There are many today who are concerned with serious problems that face our modern society: unemployment, violent crime, replacements of humans by technology, overpopulation, and a decline in the Earth's ecosystem. That's the first paragraph on the page. So that would already be one word I would have bold print. I've never heard white people talk about overpopulation and them not be talking about non-white people. I've never heard that conversation.
I stand corrected.
The birth rates are actually declining.
I actually remember talking to Mr. Fuller, I think day before yesterday, about overpopulation. He did say that that's a caveman mentality to actually think in terms of the population of the earth becoming too much because, white people lived in caves in Europe for such a long time that they're very used to thinking that way. And we come from, people that lived in sunny, spacious places where we have to live in caves that are all clumped up against each other and everything. Just have to follow up about this type of thing. He'll explain it better now than I can, but
I think if we get rid of some of the golf courses, we wouldn't have an overpopulation problem.
So if we got rid of white supremacy, we definitely wouldn't have a population problem.
Yeah, actually, there is no overpopulation problem. It's a problem of people hoarding resources, white people.
That's exactly.
I agree.
That's the problem, because there's enough land on the earth for everybody to live and be able to survive. It's what white people are doing to it.
They could make
the Venus Project.
That's what I learned from this
movie. The Venus Project is practicing racism on that movie, and the reason why I say that is because white people. I think they said in the movie that they are raised to go along with and support the current situation on the planet. No way in it that I've seen where they address trying to crack that seriously embedded code in white people that say they should be on top. That's a serious problem with white people. They in no way in the world want to be living in a situation like the. I don't know. Did you see how much were the properties? Did they offer up a price when you saw the video, ma'am, for the Venus Project?
Oh, everything's free. But you know what I'm looking at as I'm reading through the website? I'm thinking you can't get people to move towards the so-called solution unless you get them afraid. So, if you have people thinking that they're in danger, because, a lot of white people fear crime, even though they live out in the suburbs, and you have them fearing overpopulation and crowding with black people, and, they always saying China is overcrowded. You get them to move towards this solution, the Venus Project, isolate themselves from everybody else. So where does that leave everyone else? It's connected to me. It's like the Zeitgeist it's providing information, but it's funneling people to this Venus Project.
I would be okay with that if I thought that they were about practicing justice, but I don't believe that. Like the people with the Venus Project, if they really are about justice, doing the correct thing, helping people who need the most help, man, they could go down to Haiti. Hey, we got this Venus Project. It's totally sustainable. It's green. It's fantastic. We won't be dumping pollution. It'll be fantastic. I mean, you talk about reparations. This is reparations. You all are going to be on the move. They could have went down there and hooked those people up. There's black people struggling all over the world. They could go and hook those black people up. Look at this. We took these, low down, good for nothing black people and hooked them up. They are flourishing. Venus Project. Bang. I haven't seen them do that. I know there's some black people that would be down to try that if it's really, this is what should be done. This will solve our problems and life will be great. That's number one. And then little things. They talk a lot about 9/11 in these films. A lot. And, conspiracy theories and Tower 7 and blah, blah, blah. They did not mention Cynthia McKinney's name at all. Was I the only one that thought that was, a little suspect?
Not at all. The whole 9/11
at the risk
thing.
of sound ignorant, who's Cynthia McKinney?
Cynthia McKinney is a former member of Congress. She served 6 terms. They weren't all consecutive, but she served 6 terms in Georgia. And I think Cree said the thing I think she is most known for, in addition to all that, she was the 2008 Green Party presidential candidate, but she was one of the first people that began speaking out about 9/11. And I mean, grilling white people on television. Like, they got YouTube clips of her, going at white people about this and saying publicly that they had information about the attacks beforehand. And, I mean, she was leading the charge. And they didn't mention her name at all in the section. They spent a lot of time, particularly in the first Zeitgeist film, and they didn't mention her name at all. And I mean, I think she would say she took a lot of flack for that, and even lost her seat in Congress when she made a lot of drew a lot of public attention about 9/11 and her disagreement with the official report. The person who called in 4462, your line is open.
This is Nanny. The first Zeitgeist movie, in the very beginning, there's artwork, and it looks very sexual in nature. And most of the characters or features of people are white. And then almost near the end, I believe, there's a darker character or sculpture of a black person. You would assume, that's what I assumed anyway. And when I saw that, it really alerted me that this movie, something's going to be very weird about it, because I could not see why would they make an effort to have all of these statues that are stacked on top of each other, and they're naked. And it's just very weird. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but that was one of the things that really drew my attention in the very beginning of the movie.
May I be heard?
Yes.
I know some of the images that struck me were the pictures of starving African children and people in Afghanistan and in that area of the world, crying and, in the middle of war. And then they show the images of white people in those same situations, but they're soldiers that died fighting instead of helpless victims. Or the firefighters that were at 9/11 that showed up on the scene. No starving white people in, Eastern Europe, which they have. starving black people and white soldiers dying to protect them.
I guess I
This
feel
is
a lot
Nancy.
better.
Was the move? I'm sorry. Were the documentaries informative?
Not really. Not to me.
I found a lot of constructive information. You said documentaries. You talking about the Zeitgeist? There's a lot of valuable information that seems truthful. Logically speaking. But it's just if you don't have a context for all of that useful information, it can be confusing.
Can you share with us, or anybody on the line who found information in the films to be of constructive value? Can you share with us, like 2 bits of information that you felt were of constructive value? I know I'll give my one. Homeland security is dangerous. That's one bit of constructive information I got. And I'll say again, if I had seen these films more recently, I probably would have said something much sooner than I did about the whole situation with war on the horizon. But that's one big thing I learned. Homeland security is dangerous.
Well, when they were speaking about world governments and one world government and monetary systems, I wasn't sure if they were getting at overthrowing the government or just, I don't know, becoming a social activist with them. But now that I'm reading the website and they're talking about biosocial pressures and social change, I'm not clear on what they mean by biosocial pressures, because all these bio and social pressures is a byproduct of capitalization. And so he said that you can't look at logic because the world's problems have no logic, but that goes back to your last guest, Gus, where he said, well, religion, he stated in his opinion that religion didn't necessarily require that you seek logic, but just have blind faith. To me, this seems kind of dangerous because we got a geriatric older white guy who's obviously educated in the sciences pushing his idea of what he thinks society should be based off of God knows what understanding he has. And it sounds to me like they're garnering support for this, and I'm not really clear what the end product is supposed to be. And to be honest, the doggone compound looked like a military compound to me because it looks very similar to the design of the Pentagon. It's a 360-degree perimeter. They got about maybe 4 avenues of approach. It's circular. And I'm wondering, is this supposed to be a place to live? Is it supposed to be utopia? Where are the black people in the group? All I see is Anglo-Saxons. I'm starting to feel a little paranoid. That's all I'm saying. Starting to feel paranoid. This new social design.
Well, you're saying that, this is Nanny, you're saying that the compound, you've got to remember, is that that's their experiment. But if you look at the other pictures of what they would like to do, it's more than just a compound. It is very, very modern. Very modern. They use housing underwater, above ground, and everything in between. But what you see at the website for the Venus, Florida property is just their experiment.
So if you're a person that donates to this, who gets to live here? Who gets to live here? Is it everyday Americans? How much do you need? How much money do you need to have? What's the criteria?
Well, what do you say gets to live where?
I mean, you said they have different facilities above ground, below ground. I was looking in the circular facility. It's a lot of beautiful design ideas. But who gets to live in this utopia that they're speaking of with the palm trees and above ground transportation systems. Who gets to live in? This is like a adult Florida Disneyland to me.
That's a good question. I would recommend you pose that question to Jock and Roxanne.
I'm gonna send him an email.
I'm really serious about that because it's one I hadn't thought about because I think it's so far-fetched anyway.
People scared. I don't think it's as far-fetched as we think. You know, Michael Moore talk about the culture of fear. I think a lot more people find this appealing than maybe you and I might think. I personally kind of like the way things are, but I mean, I don't know. It's just like 50 years, 300 years away. What? I mean, I have to do more reading. Before I pose that question, I want to see if any of his literature addressed that question. Who's going to listen?
Can I be heard?
Yes.
The Venus Project, I'm not at my computer, but it sounds to me like a global form of white flight. White people take this and they build their own little compound and you can't come in. Just like when they ran from the suburbs. Take the resources, you can have it, we don't want it, and we'll let it deteriorate. That's what that sounds like.
This is Nandy. So then what happens to non-white folk?
They control the population.
The
even
eugenics.
have a cybernetic government.
The eugenics. They kill us somehow. Starve us. That's what it sounds like.
So how far are we away from the killing, the eugenics?
The person who called in 9522, your line is open. If you want to call in 347-215-6071. The question on the table was how far away do we think we are from eugenics or the killing, of non-white people?
I'm just listening.
What was that question again, Gus?
The question that was asked was how far away do people think we are from the killings? Since that's a guess, you all can take a minute to think. I want to rewind to the question that I asked because it did not get answered. The people who are saying they got constructive information from Zeitgeist, can you share like one or two things that you felt were constructive that you learned from these films? Anyone?
Yeah, can I be heard?
Yes.
Hey, this is G. Yeah, one aspect of the documentary I found a little constructive was not necessarily the truth in the religion, even though there were a lot of truth to it. But what I got from it was just a question, the religion you were brought up in, because I was raised in the South, Catholic, and I was even an altar boy for a few years. So, seeing a movie in college, or seeing it in college was pretty overwhelming. But another thing was the fallacy of the monetary system. So, but with religion, he it seems as though he tried to equate Egyptian religions with the way people worship Jesus, but it was although it's a carbon copy, they didn't worship, I guess, the same. It wasn't the same ideas, I guess. And he says that the original stuff, he usually references it as pagan. So, yes. And pagan to me means white, because Webster defines pagan as one who has little or no religion and who delights in sensual pleasures and material goods. So,
It's not for people who don't have a job, because it's telling people how a man and a woman would select a house and how they would interact with the computer system. But I don't see a time frame. Wow. This is amazing.
The movie, to me, it seems like I was saying, just another play in the white supremacist playbook, you know. And so one of the constructive things I picked up was that they do films like that and other images and sounds to get a reaction, you know, to get victims, particularly non-white people, to feel emotional or passionate about something, you know, because when you do that, it reduces your ability to logically respond. So, you know, you see that a lot in the movie. They'll use things that work. So I know they duplicated a lot of the religion symbols and things. They will use things that get the effect that they're looking for.
This is crazy. I'm looking at the 101 questions they have. They don't even mention any other teachings from any other geniuses from around the world. They mention Karl Marx. They mention Einstein. They ask about Middle Eastern religion. It's absolutely no room for people of melanated people here. It's crazy. I agree with the caller that said that this is just white flight on a global level.
What did the caller, the female who said this is white flight on a global level, what do you anticipate that they will do with the non-white people whom they are fleeing from?
What they're doing now is that maybe more open, like dislocating people. Like when you spoke about them talking about the train going from China and all across the world, I thought about them putting that train through a black neighborhood like gentrification. Gentrification, starving the people, no jobs, taking all the jobs into their little compound. People just starving. People just starving of poisoning the resources, poisoning the air, except on a higher level, more than what they're doing now.
And they say it on question 89 when they ask the questions over the past 25 years that they chose to answer. They said all countries that have resource shortages, and they feel that they will see the advantages. So they feel that they will have all the resources again, and those that don't get in line will eventually be forced somehow to get in line because their resources won't allow for survival or flourishing. Oh, my goodness. I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. That's question 89 when they're talking about the people in the Middle East on the fact sheet. This is crazy.
This is Nanny. Fresco and Meadows, the two scientists that have built up Venus, Florida, they're leaving the United States. That's why they're trying to sell the property. But one thing I noticed with their future plans is it looks very similar to Mumbai, India. Many of the buildings are designed the same from the pictures I've seen from there. And our former vice president in the last administration, he supposedly has moved there, lives there. I know he has money there. And then Halliburton, which is located in Houston, their main operation moved to Mumbai. And it's a very, very modern city, and the resemblance to what Jock and the Meadows woman want to do, it is uncanny. So perhaps that's where these buildings are going to be built first, and I think they've already started.
But they never address the social issues, like how do you address racism, sexism, classism, homophilia? They talk about a family in terms of being a man and a woman. How do you, I can understand them creating a beautiful place for people to live, but how do you change the people's mindset? It all seems like a science fiction movie on acid.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
This is Latin America Short. I can't really talk as soon as I want to because I'm working during the holidays. So I'm in a taxi, but from my understanding, I hate to be like the advocate and going against the crowd, but my understanding is that they say that if you change the environment, white supremacy, all of these other problems will go away, but they never actually say white supremacy. That's the key. They say system, they don't say white supremacy. They say environment, they say scarcity, but they don't talk about white supremacy. And that's what I was trying to say is that we should be thinking about. I don't know if anybody's against technology, but I'm not against technology. I'm for science. I'm for technology because I think it's inevitable that technology is going to take. It's the main source of our solutions to our problems. That's going to be the key to solving everything. If black people are more technological and so forth, and I think that being scared of technology is going to ultimately do us in, and it's going to give white people the advantage. But what he's talking about is the environment is going to be the thing that's going to change all the social problems, and they're going to try to make a technological, automated society that takes care of all those problems automatically. Because I remember talking to Fuller, and he had talked about a book, and I read other books that talked about the same thing. Even in 1984, it touches on this, that in the future that people are going to be doing two things. They're going to be either maintaining machines or consuming the products of machines. And if you do that, if people only do those two things, they won't have jobs. And if they don't have any jobs, and I don't know why no one's talking about this with the Zeitgeist movement whole thing. If you don't have jobs, and you don't have money, and if you don't have money, you don't have any white supremacy. You can't have white supremacy without a monetary system, and that's what we're seeing right now. It's the failure of the monetary system. The monetary system is falling apart. There's technological unemployment because white supremacy cannot function and produce any more technology. It served its purpose. It got white people out of the cave, and that's pretty much all it can do. You see what I'm saying? So, I hope that we're not afraid of technology. It's just that white people are the ones that came up with the idea of the Zeitgeist. We need to hijack that movement and start to have people like different black scientists start to come up with ideas to take over this kind of movement and make our own. Because I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as some of the people are making it seem. I'll give everybody else.
Well, with regards to technology, what technology is all about access. You can know how to you can see a computer and think you know how it works, but if you don't have access to a computer, you can't work a computer. What about all the people who don't have running electricity lines, or pipe into their homes? They don't have access to technology. So it's not just the issue of being scared of technology. It's the issue of not being an industrialized nation and having the benefit of technology, because it's only about maybe 6 to 8 countries who are in power. And secondly,
right.
White supremacy is not just practiced on a economic front. It's practiced according to Neely Fuller in 9 areas. When you talk about the politics of power, it's just not an issue with money. We're talking about the politics of disenfranchisement of people of color.
I was having
technology. They don't have access.
Having a conversation.
It's a matter of one thing. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just racism with cell phones. That's all it is. So, we have to basically constantly fight white people, even if we got spaceships, even if we're living on other planets, until all this stuff is hammered out. It could be Peter Joseph, It could be George Bush. It could be anybody. We just have to keep on going until we get this hammered out.
This is Nanny. One thing you must know about the Venus Project is that they are going to, or their idea is to get rid of monetary systems, period. And in terms of, pardon?
I think that's a good thing. Get rid of the money system where we don't have white supremacists anymore. They have less power. I think that's a primary thing to get rid of. We get rid of the money system, then I think that we'd be able to count. We'd be more independent of white people.
May I interject?
I'm not convinced that not having a so-called money system would mean an end to racism, white supremacy. That is not adding up for me. If anyone would like to.
I agree. They make the money. If they pull the money, they can still practice white supremacy.
I agree.
They make the money. They have the technology. They want to drop bombs on somebody. They don't need money to drop a bomb on you. They're just going to drop a bomb on you. I mean,
how would that work? I mean, to the person who stated that without a monetary system you wouldn't have white supremacy. I mean, how would that work?
Let me correct what I said. What I was saying is, without a monetary system, there'd be pretty much, it would mean equity between people, basically. If you didn't have a monetary system, there'd be no difference between one person or another, because one would have money, one has more money now. That's one of the things that helps maintain the system. If you take that away from the system, I mean, you really can't have a system without economics, without money. I just don't see how you can have white supremacy without some kind of monetary system.
Okay, so you're saying that if there was no money anywhere in existence on the planet, that people would not get mistreated on the basis of color? Is that what you're saying?
What I was saying is that there would be no system to do it. I mean, they'd probably get mistreated, but it wouldn't be a system to do it. There wouldn't be a white supremacy, pushing it like it is now.
Well, the Venus Project is supposedly a resource-based economy. That's why a monetary system is not part of their ideal.
Yeah, but who owns all the resources now? See, it could be no money circulating. They still own all the resources.
Mhm.
You could have no money circulating. If Joe owns all the banana plantations in Jamaica, they control the food source. You would still have to probably grovel to them just to get food with no money. They would set up a little army. You want some of these bananas? You're going to work or you die. You're going to starve. I mean, even with no money, they still have resources.
Well, what I was really getting at was basically the idea that in the future, this all has to do with where things seem like they're leading to. Not where we are right now. Is that what's going on right now is that we're going into an automated system, and if it keeps on going that way, there really wouldn't be any purpose for jobs, and if there's no jobs, there really wouldn't be any more money. So somewhere along the line, I don't know how it will be a different kind of white supremacy. If anything, I can't exactly explain what Fuller had talked to me about that one time, but I remember him saying something about when I asked him the question about if there was just machines and everything, then how would there be any white supremacy?
I'm sorry, the background noise is real unacceptable. If you're someplace with a lot of noise, if you could mute your line, that would be helpful. There are a lot of people on the line. We've done a really excellent job keeping the background noise down. It sounds like it could be dishes. I'm not sure, but just mute your line if you could, please. if I continue to hear it, then I'll have to try and go through and figure out which line it is. And there's a lot of you, so please keep the background noise down. Thank you. And the person who called in, 8507, your line is open. 8507, your line is open. Greetings, Mr. Edward Williams. Good to hear from you, sir.
Oh, good evening. Nothing to add, just listening.
Caller who said you think it will lead to a different or new type of white supremacy, would it be accurate to say the further refinement of racism, white supremacy? The male caller who spoke previously.
I would say that it would pretty much like, I mean, from what I've been looking at, if there was no such thing as money, and we live in an automated system where pretty much everything was for free, it would either mean that there was no white supremacy anymore. After there would mean that we implemented a system of justice, and that's what the system of justice would look like, no monetary system, or it would have to be some other kind of refinement of white supremacy. But I don't think that white supremacy as we know it could exist if the money system just disappeared.
The further refinement, according to what you see promoted in the Zeitgeist films, which you say would be more accurate to say it would be a more refined version of white supremacy or a fine-tuning, further refinement of it. Because to me,
saying that, right?
As long as certain groups control everything, even if you got rid of these, the fractional reserves, the U.S. currency, that type of thing, the Federal Reserve, white supremacy can still be practiced, and it was practiced before these institutions existed. But like the person was saying before, still, if a certain group of people control the resources, someone was talking about being afraid of technology earlier. I don't think non-white people are afraid of technology. I couldn't understand for the life of me why every time I looked at maps of, let's say, internet hits across the world on certain sites, it was always like lights out in Africa. And I asked someone who just came back from Nigeria, why aren't they doing solar power there? Why aren't they, doing wind power, like more, things to bring in electricity so that they're more productive in their countries and can do more things more easily? Aren't they run heavily on generators? And he said, yes, they are. But if you try to go in there and do something like that, he said white people are the ones that have a monopoly on supplying the generators. So they don't want African people to have electricity and to be on the grid like they are here, because it would mess up their monopoly and control and ability to make all the money on that. So basically, if you did try to do that, you would have to run into opposition from the white people who are currently keeping Africa in the amount of darkness it's in, but making money on these generators.
I see your point.
The biggest problem is white supremacy, because even if African people said, okay, we're going to be, solar powered and come up with our own technology, pretty soon you'd have the white supremacists knocking at the door, starting a war to maintain that control.
I agree.
Even if it was a system of justice in place or we were close to it, I still wouldn't want to see white people running. I don't trust them. Their records long of not being able
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I mean, they shouldn't be able to run anything like that. I mean, like I always hear people talk about replace white supremacy with a system of justice. I never actually hear what it's going to actually look like. I mean, what's the goal? What is it going to be when we actually have a system of justice? Shouldn't it be a world that has automation that's controlled by non-white people, but a world of automation where there isn't so much stress on work and jobs and redundant work that we don't really need to do anymore? So that's what it seems like we're running into anyhow, a more automated system. But we should begin to be taking control over that. We should become more technologically, regardless of the Zeitgeist, regardless of white people, we should be the ones to begin to bring that in and demand that, because that would make our lives a lot easier. That's what I think. It shouldn't take Peter Joseph. It shouldn't take all these other people. It should take us to start to do that now and start to push it. Use them or hijack their movement the way they hijack our music and try to implement this technology. And make sure that we're the ones in control. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask, is automation connected to genocide?
Under white supremacy.
The person who dialed in 3971, your line is open. We can keep the background noise down. That would be great. Thank you, everybody.
Automation.
Family. I actually am enjoying this, and the sister is on point. And using their tools and technology hasn't proven in our history to benefit us, because the system that created it had already pre-designed it for control, and they have it. And so whatever we do to free ourselves from white supremacy, it has to be our own.
Mr. Williams, did you have a question about automation?
Oh, yes, sir. I was just because some of the terms that are being used are even confusing for me. I mean, even when we were briefly discussing eradicating money, I mean, we didn't really say exactly what it is we meant when we were using the term money. I mean, were we just talking about paper money or things like that? I mean, people can be money, depending on how they're used or misused. So when someone mentioned something about automation, automation of what? What are we talking about?
Well, one of the biggest fears that a lot of people have is that machines such as ATMs took some bank tellers' jobs away. You have the automation of the auto industry. You have the automation of electrical grids with powerful control rooms. And as technology improves, people who are not prepared to move forward and get a new skill find themselves out of a job. Hence, the coal industry and many of the manufacturing industries that we have. So what they're saying is that if we become too technologically advanced, there are no jobs. You have people with a lot of resources. You already have the evil government overseeing a lot of stuff. It's going to mean the disenfranchisement of a lot of people, and that's not good, especially with overpopulation. I don't think the automation is being used simultaneously with genocide. I think it's being seen as something that could be detrimental to, the pursuit of happiness or whatever for some folks.
When you say disenfranchised, do you mean people being mistreated on the basis of color?
In a broad scheme, no, because I guess a bank teller, you have white and black bank tellers, and let's talk about parking attendants. A lot of times when I go to park a vehicle, a lot of times I may see Africans or African Americans parking the cars, but they have new automation technology where you just use a machine, and whoever holds that job is going to be out of one once the parking lot become automated. I'm not sure if it's a strictly African American thing or if it's just a job related thing and whatnot. I'm not really sure. I think that could be a problem for anybody that's working in the field that's becoming automated, to include the people in Flint, Michigan, once they lost their jobs and the factories went overseas, but even once they started getting machines to make the things. But as long as we make the machines and you're going to always need a human, where's the fear coming in where people think they're no longer machines are going to replace everybody? Because I don't know if I want a machine. I don't mean to be crass. I don't know if I want a gynecologist as a machine. So I don't think that argument is wholly valid, in my opinion.
But what choices do we have in deciding if it's a machine, gynecologist, or a human?
Probably money. The more money you have, it's the difference between getting your coffee from Dunkin' Donuts or a 50-cent cup of coffee from a machine. It all depends on what you have. If you have a monetary system, I guess, with some type of prestige or whatever.
So where would that put non-white people if you're going to use dollars and cents?
Well, when I think about non-white people, I think about the people in Honduras. I think about the people in the bush. I'm wondering if they even, that's what my whole argument was about with regards to access to technology. We talked about the generators. We talked about the solar panels. The question becomes access. Will we have access to all that? And I think in the sense of that, when they're talking about these built-up communities, I'm not sure where I'm not sure every place, that they're talking about building it. But I don't think that, the poor peoples of the world is going to have access to that.
So what happens to the poor people of the world?
Oh, we get froze out. I think basically that's what they're talking about with population control. If you're not agreeable and you're not going along with the program of utopia, then you're not fit to live there. You just fend for yourself out in the wild with no resources.
They're doing that
people
now.
Who.
There was a recent bill passed, or maybe it didn't, or whatever. I'm not sure. But it certainly says that we're moving to a cashless society where I believe by 2013 or 2012, everyone receiving a Social Security check or payment, it has to be automated. It has to be directly deposited. And that's been on the table for a long time, but they finally set a date. It was sometime this week that I read about it. So cashless society is on its way for everyone. So what does that mean to non-white folk having a cashless society?
I mean, are we still going to be in a system of white supremacy?
Yeah.
Are we still going to be in a system of white supremacy? I mean, that's if we're still under white supremacy, I mean, what did you say? Paperless white supremacy? Is that what someone said?
No money with white supremacy. No paper money with white supremacy. Same thing.
No money, white supremacy. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I have concluded is the problem, not money. We don't need to get rid of money. We need to get rid of the system of white supremacy. The person who dialed in last four digits, 5827, your line is open.
Hey, greetings, Gus. It's Thomas Call from Charlotte.
Greetings, sir. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, very, very interesting discussion. It's funny when someone asked that question and someone responded, what would happen if they took away this medium, this cash that really has no quote unquote intrinsic value, meaning that it doesn't really have anything behind it that has value. Like you said, it would just be more of the same. It would just be, white supremacy, just without a promise to pay. Because that's really all the money really is a promise to pay its debt. Because it's issued by the Federal Reserve. So it's very curious to me. A lot of people, when I first learned about a lot of this stuff, going back to when I read "Behold the Pale Horse" many years ago, many moons ago. I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing really you could do about it in terms of, if there were a set group of people, the black nobility or any one of those groups, what are you going to do about it? And the only thing you really, at the end of the day, can do to try to make your way through this madness is, try to become less reliant on them. For instance, make sure you take care of yourself, eat properly so you don't have to spend, hundreds of, and thousands of dollars on health insurance, and try to, find ways to shelter yourself in a way where you're going to be, able to use the resources appropriately so that way you don't have to pay high gas prices and high, heating prices and electrical prices. Those are the types of things that we probably may want to talk about it, just as a suggestion, because there's nothing that you really can do about it. You have zero control over it. That's just my thought. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I don't think it's nothing that one person can do, but I think if a whole huge collective group of people decided they wasn't going to be a part of the foolery, that's one thing. But I also was thinking, what about the people outside the system, the gainfully unemployed and the unemployable or the fellas who can't get things, I don't know if they could get Social Security and stuff, but what about the people who's not within the system to earn money? What do they do once we switch off this monetary system? And I guess they're going to legalize drugs and prostitution, because how are you going to pay for illegal activities if you don't have any money?
That's what I'm saying. It's the whole concept of them abolishing, currency in the form of, banknotes, which are issued by the Federal Reserve. I don't know. It seems pretty far-fetched. I mean, the fact that they're looking to, potentially take Social Security and mandate that, Social Security be direct deposit in someone's bank account is used. They do that in most companies, believe it or not. Most large companies will mandate that you have a bank account to direct deposit funds because of the cost of check processing. So, I don't know if, getting rid of currency, because currency is traded on different exchanges, and I don't know if it's realistic that they're going to get rid of a hard currency anytime in the foreseeable future because they benefit from it. Anytime they benefit from it, they're probably the more likely to keep it around. So I don't know about that. And being out working the banking system, I don't know if that's a reality. I think that once again, what you do is you try to find ways to be less dependent on different things, and that's really the way that you approach it from a solution-based standpoint. The people who are not in the system, there's people right now who are not in the system. They don't have a bank account. They don't have a checking account. That's a great question. What's going to happen to those people? Who knows? I know that there are several companies out there right now. One of the companies is a gentleman out of New York, where basically people get a debit card in which to do transactions with, where there's no credit check, and they end up getting access to the system. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
This is Nanny. I believe we could live in a cashless society very easily. And as far as them making money on having some sort of currency, they may replace it with something else in terms of making money. The same thing in the oil fields. I figure eventually they're going to pump all the oil out of the earth. So the green movement is moving and very strong.
Yeah. Well, we're I don't know if anyone's familiar with the term peak oil. We're either at or close to that point in history where we have what's called peak oil, meaning that it's gotten to the point where they can't really extract much more oil out of the ground. That's why you're starting to see more of a push for offshore drilling, even more before, even with the calamity that happened in the Gulf region. They were estimating there's about 1 trillion barrels of oil left in the ground. And so they were hoping for $100 a barrel oil, which will probably be there in the next couple of years, based on what things are going with the economy. And so at $100 is kind of where they were hoping for, so that way they could reap profits, because the cost for them to actually extract the oil in a lot of cases that's already here. There's little to nothing. It's a couple of dollars per barrel, the actual cost. And so, that's what they're hoping for is $100 trillion worth of revenue. So.
Context of white supremacy, the Zeitgeist Roundtable. If you want to call in, the number 347-215-6071. Again, 347-215-6071. I put it in the description of this program. I wrote it down. I'm going to read exactly what I wrote from the description. Forgive me as I scroll down. Okay. If you do not understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, this film will totally confuse you. Obviously, an homage to Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Just even this dialogue, like I've been chatting with Tater Pie, and because I don't have a chat room, of course, but chatting, typing online and different things, and people have even commented being confused about some of the terms that are being used, and if there is no money, would that end racism, white supremacy? And I feel like this conversation is kind of the effect that I think the film Zeitgeist can have on non-white people, because as I think the gentleman pointed out at the very beginning, they do not ever address racism, white supremacy. They talk about all this stuff and all these problems and 9/11 and terrorism and religion and the money. They talk about almost every area of people activity and why it's messed up, but they do not address the people who are most to blame for all of these problems. They do not address it simply as white supremacy. When you don't do that, it leaves the room open for a lot of confusion, and I feel like there's been a lot of it during this discussion even. I feel like we never have shows, I feel like, where people are not really addressing white supremacy directly. I've just noticed there's been a lot of they will just vague references to people doing things, incorrect things, it seems like, not white supremacists, not white people, which I think we do pretty consistently on this program. That's just been my observation. Other people, if you listen or you have thoughts on that, if you think it's accurate, if you think it's inaccurate.
Very accurate. I was thinking that myself. I've heard automation and, like you said, the day and peak oil automation and everything is just like white supremacy. That's what it is. So I concur.
So I guess my major question has been, what is his motivation for even doing this? Because it seems to me, reading his resume, I think his name is Jacques, I don't even know his last name, it doesn't seem like any of the things that he's describing in society has a serious impact on him, because he looks like he's over 60 or 70 years old. If he's talking about overpopulation and pollution and all that, at some point in time he's going to be out of here. I don't know, I always ask questions, what's the real motivation for this? And discussing it with everyone, it seems as if there's a lot of information being presented. I'm not really sure if they provide and if they cite in sources or anything, but like you said, Gus, the main root of the problem isn't even being identified. And from what some of the other callers said, how black people are still being presented in a negative light and not in a holistic manner, it's still, I don't see how even going this route benefit anybody of color, because I was looking at the different countries that they visited, and I didn't see one country of color, to be honest with you. I mean, I saw Sweden, Denmark, and the list goes on and on. I don't think the whole movement is even interested in addressing the real problem, just creating another solution to a problem that really don't exist.
This is Nanny. I joined the show late. Listening? Did anyone define Zeitgeist?
I'm looking at it right now. It's the spirit of time, general trend of thought of feeling, characteristic of a particular period of time. Zeitgeist. This is German derivative.
I was going to do that. I missed out. I'm just talking to you, Tater Pie. They can't.
The spirit, attitude, or general outlook of a specific time or period, especially as it is reflected in literature, philosophy, etc.
From whose perspective?
It's a German word, and it's literally time spirit, tide, ghost.
Okay, is that from the perspective?
Whose philosophy, though?
Yeah, is that from the perspective of white people who mistreat people on the basis of color?
Well, I guess it's in the sort of that guy who created the whole movement, Jacques. But you know what? I should know his name because I just looked at the site. It's his vision.
It's Jacques Fresco. Jacques Fresco. And Zeitgeist, the word or the concept goes farther back than Jacques Fresco. It's I'm looking for it now. It's one man. I found it at Wikipedia. Johann Gottfried Herder and other German romanticists, such as Cornelius Jagdman.
Okay,
but
are those
it's
white
best
people?
known, yes. Well, I'm saying yes, I would assume so.
Okay.
And it's related to Hegel's philosophy of history. But Wikipedia's definition is a little more in-depth. It says the spirit of the times or the spirit of the age, zeitgeist, is the general cultural, intellectual, ethical, spiritual, and or political climate within a nation or even specific groups, along with the general ambiance, morals, socio-cultural direction, and a mood associated with an era.
We know what came out of Germany.
The movie. Can I make a comment? Make a comment here. Just listening and want to add in my perspective. I think that the Zeitgeist movie is set up, like you just said, by a German white supremacist, so that other white people will see themselves as left out by a Jewish-ran economy. Because in the addendum, you basically get this idea that the Zionist Jews are in control of the monetary system, and the Zionist Jews are in control of the theocracy and the theological basis of most beliefs. And so these are the enemy, or these are presented as the ones who are in control. When you talk about white supremacy within the context of white supremacy, white people hate white people as well. And it's also a matter of oligarchy where the rich rule over the poor. And, for a long time, the Jews have been, I'm not saying that they're innocent in anything. I'm just saying that from a white supremacist perspective, they have been used as that scapegoat to kind of place the blame, so that when it comes for them to change the cultural identity, which now everybody is rioting and rebelling around the world because of the economic system. In any part of the world you go to, Greece, the United Kingdom, Spain, etc., you have some form of anarchy or rebellion. And I think that that's the reason for the film, is to see the white paranoia of, a Jewish-ran economy or a non-European-led white world, where these poor people are going to be excluded. And so the whole movement, like the hippies at one time, the whole movement is to change people's thoughts, not necessarily to get into the truth of everybody, paying homage to our African ancestors, but just necessarily to say we're going to shake off the Zionists, or we're going to shake off the Jewish control. That don't mean we're going to relinquish our control as white supremacists, but we definitely don't want the Jews in control. That's what I get from the movie.
Can I be heard? Okay, so basically the movie, the movement is basically a movement of refined white supremacy. Because now it's everyone looking at the Zionist Jew, and as far as I'm concerned, they're white. Period.
And within that, there's movies, and I don't mean to get too far off the subject, but there are movies that kind of give you a picture of how the future would look to white supremacy. The movie RoboCop 3 comes to mind, where they were basically gentrifying whole communities and moving them and selling off buildings to Chinese people or to China. There's another movie called Tank Girl, where the Power and Light Company or the Power and the Water Company had everybody in jail, and they worked for the Power and Light Company. And if you were in prison, you were underground, fighting against the system. And then there was a movie not too long ago that came out about vampires, and people lived underground, and they had a farming system, and when they went up, overground, they had to worry about these vampires attacking. And I just say that, because when we're talking about white supremacy, this is not, I'm not going to say it's not white people, but it's white people functioning as an entity. And I don't hear us as black people. I can't be mad at white people, like Dr. Francis Kirk Wilson said, for playing the white side of the chessboard. If their function is to be white supremacist and to survive as an entity on this earth, as a people, and they're playing the white side of the chessboard, we have to question ourselves, where do we fit into that, and why aren't we playing constructively the black side of the chessboard? We're reacting. Why aren't we more proactive? And we talked about the oil. They just, discovered more oil in Ghana. So Ghana is going to be, the new shale regime. When we see things come up where Dick Cheney is indicted by Nigeria, you don't hear a mass outcry from black people in the diaspora saying, get the war criminal, arresting, and let us try, over here. Instead, we allow them to pay off the Nigerians $250 million, to shut up about it. And there's just a whole lot of economies of scale that evolve from white supremacy under, their domination of our natural resources. You get sex and child slavery, you get the diamond enslavement, you get the cocoa, the chocolate slavery, and all of that is to benefit white supremacy, but it is black people who are helping white supremacy to function. So my concern with us as a group or as a people is, how do we react, or how do we be proactive so that we can combat, what's obviously white people playing the white side of the chessboard.
The people who called in, your lines are open. So 4462, 2203, and 3456. I guess if you called in from Skype or whatever, you can keep the background noise down. We've done a superb job. Thank you, everybody. If you're in a loud environment, if you could, mute your line, that's great. But we're doing a great job keeping the background noise down. Thank you, everybody. Feel free to call in 347-215-6071. I did want to share, I think the term allow was used, talking about what's happening in Ghana with the oil and the war crimes against Dick Cheney, or charges against Dick Cheney. And I think it was, we allow white people to do something. I don't allow white people to do anything. The white people that practice racism, white supremacy, are in control. They do what they're going to do. I didn't give permission. I just don't think that's the correct term to use to say that victims allow racists to do something under these conditions. I just wanted to make sure I got that in.
I'll just make a quick comment on the term mad. I mean, I think when you have people, whether they playing chess or anything else, and the outcome, the result of what they're doing is mistreatment, then, me being on the end of that mistreatment, a victim of white supremacy, then being mad is probably going to be a natural response to being unjustly treated, being mistreated, particularly over something stupid like how I look. So, that's enough to get somebody upset.
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can be heard, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing about the timing of the broadcast. I really appreciate the show. I always wanted to participate a lot more, but since I'm a taxi driver and I'm driving on the 25th, I just wish we could have thought that this could have been done like at a different time. Like it could be like another show on the Zeitgeist. Maybe you get Peter Joseph or Doc Fesco. I don't know. Have us ask them questions. I wouldn't mind asking them questions myself. I just don't have enough time and energy to concentrate on the show like I really wanted to. But I really appreciate it, though, definitely.
Did anyone see the portion in Zeitgeist? Is towards the end, I think, when they're talking about the Venus Project, and they show a white woman with looks to me like a white woman with a non-white child. Did anybody see that? It's at the end of Zeitgeist, the first one, or excuse me, the second one. I'm sorry, the second one.
I don't recall seeing it. That's such a common image right now. So
this is Nanny. I don't remember. It's been such a long time since I watched both the movies.
What are your thoughts on that, Gus?
I think that portion of the film was connected to the Venus Project. So, I mean, if that's the vision of the future, where the only non-white people are little non-white children that are adopted by white people, yikes. That's ugly white supremacy. Like The Blind Side, that's the best that I got to look forward to. Maybe I'll get adopted by white woman, racist. Wow. It's looking bad. Things are looking bleak. I'm sorry?
Can I say something to that?
Please.
I remember one time I was driving my cab, and I saw a white woman, and I had 4 white males in my cab. And I saw a white woman with 2 non-white children that are about 3 or 2 years old, and she had book bags in the shape of monkeys on their back, and she was holding them by a leash that looked like the tail connected to the monkeys. And all of us in the cab, me and the white guy, commented on how racist and obviously racist that was, and that these children might be this woman's, offspring, this white woman's offspring, but it was extremely racist to see monkeys in the shape of, book bags in the shape of monkeys attached to the leash that this white woman was holding in the middle of public and down in Savannah, Georgia, which is a very white supremacist place, if there's any place in the world that's white supremacy. I mean, maybe the Venus Project might lead to that. Hopefully not.
Yeah, when you got people talking about overpopulation and then showing images of white men and women with non-white children, I have a lot of suspicion about that. Particularly if you're not saying anything about racism, white supremacy, a lot of suspicion about that. Person who dialed in 6874, your line is open. The live stream is going to end in about 5 minutes. So if you're listening at Blog Talk Radio and you think you want to talk or listen, you should call right now. The number is 347-215-6071. The number again, 347-215-6071. Did anybody else have comments about that image in the film, if that meant anything, or if anybody saw it, the white woman with the non-white child?
Yeah, I noticed it too. I mean, one of the first things, or the core thing that made me think about with that was just whenever you got white people talking about solving problems and involving non-white people and not talking about getting rid of racism and white supremacy, the red flag that goes off for me is that they're talking about white sex or bedroom integration, tragic arrangement. That's what I think about. When that come up.
I don't remember that picture, but the imagery reminds me of this comment I read. This guy made a video on YouTube about racism, white supremacy, and a white woman from the UK said, let's stop talking about racism because the future of the black race will be born in the wombs of white women. Something to that nature.
You see, what does that mean?
I guess, we're black women are obsolete, black men. Your children are going to come through white women. That imagery, I see that all over the place. Besides Zeitgeist, the Venus Project, like I said, I don't even remember seeing it in that movie. But it's so common, it's like programming.
I agree. I see it every day.
And can I add to that? White people at zero population growth. For everyone that's born, 2 or 3 of them dies, or they just don't have a healthy reproductive rate. They do a lot of infertility drugs, and they have litters at times. My concern with the imagery of the white woman and the black child is, where white women are adopting black children, black women are aborting black children, or our children are in foster care on a mass level. And, where we may not like the imagery of a Sandra Bullock being able to adopt a child out of the New Orleans war, being that we are victims of white supremacy and kind of at their disposal, they have that option. Whereas, I know mad sisters, myself included, when we have babies or when we get pregnant, this is not a happy thing. You have to deal with child support, you have to deal with uncommitted relationships and so on. And, all of that feeds into that system that allows our children, to be adopted. And so, if a black child grows up hating their black mother and seeing here this white woman is who has the economic means to take care of me, and then the culture basically reinforces, that black people are just a bunch of, deranged degenerates, what you see in music or what you may see on television, you really don't have any interaction with them, and all that you have is this white woman. She may have a point as far as the black nation's future coming through the womb of a white woman. It's just what type of love is she going to teach a black child, if any? If it's love me or worship me, that's the regular thing we're already getting.
I wanted to bring on, we have lots of people that dialed in. Hopefully this will just be like a massive chat about white supremacy and Zeitgeist. If you called in, your line is open. Again, keep the background noise down. A lot of people called in. If you have constructive comments or what have you, that's cool. Mute your line if you're just listening. Please mute your line. Please mute your line if you're just listening. If you know you're not going to talk and you just want to listen, mute your line. Okay. Please mute your line if you know you're not going to talk. Please mute your line if you know you're not going to talk. All right. Everybody that called in, your line is open. Feel free.
This is Nanny. At the C.O.W.S. Blog Talk homepage, the Zeitgeist image on the YouTube video player, what is that? And what does it mean? It looks like hell with me.
It's crazy. Looks like a lot of. I'm echoing. It looks like a lot of could be carcasses. Does that look like? It looks like a battle of some sort. Is that what you all were saying? Is that what it looks like to you all?
Xbox Rewind. Xbox Play.
You say it?
An Xbox.
Don't
Thank
hold
you.
radio.
I guess if you are listening to the show online, if you could get that turned off, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, some of the images look like animals and people lying up with animals, or it's very, very strange. There are angels.
I see that. Yeah, I do see the some kind of bestiality. Yeah. Does it look like a battle? Is that just me? Do you all think it's not some sort of battle scene, or?
It looks that way. It's weird. It's very, very weird. What do you think it means?
I don't remember the spot in the film where that shot comes up. Like, I don't remember the context of when that image is shown. But again, this is Zeitgeist. See, this is what I feel like. Again, it just leads to a lot of confusion. This whole film, like, you end up using terms that haven't been precisely defined, and really just talking around racism, white supremacy, not talking directly about the problem. That's like, it causes a lot of confusion. Maybe that was the intent. Maybe that was the intent in the first place, to cause confusion. I believe a strategy of racist man and racist woman is to selectively release bits and pieces of information. So maybe that's what this series of films is.
Well, I think that image is actually defines the word, because it says the spirit of the times is the definition of zeitgeist. And when you consider that it's cultural, intellectual, spiritual, and that image looks totally, like I said, like hell. And it looks like so many different things going on, and I think that is certainly the times we're living in. A state of confusion. Does anyone else have an idea what's going on in that image?
Where the image located? I think
it's in the description for the program. YouTube has just the clip that they're showing from the video. So if you're at Blog Talk Radio, if you can look at the description for this show, it should be right there. it might not be up on the show page.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think it's already refreshed and won't be up for a while or something.
Okay. If it's not on the show page, what you can do, I suspect, is to do a blog talk search for Zeitgeist, and this episode should pop up, and then just click it, and you should be able to see it. That's one thing you could do. Yeah. See, again, Zeitgeist, a lot of confusion, investing a lot of time and energy in, things that are not directly related to racism, white supremacy, in my opinion.
I don't see any black folk in that image. Do you?
It's hard to tell. It looks like there could be a black person or a non-white person, like to the right side of the image. It looks like maybe a male. Maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah, see, I don't know. I mean, the image is so crazy. It's so crazy. It looks like there are crucifixes in the background as well. It is pretty nutty. I need more information about that painting. Anyway, that'll be homework assignment, I guess, for anybody on the line if you're interested to look at the description for this show so you can see the image and, come to your own conclusions about it. Did any of the newer people who called in, did you all have a question or a thought about the film? Any of the newer folks who called in?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this movie is about racism, white supremacy. That's it. It's going to be more refined. That's it. Go after the Zionists, go after the bankers, go after the Illuminati and every other term that can be thrown out. Not white supremacists, so.
I think from what I've seen in my community, the impact of it is taking questioning religion mainstream, whereas it used to be just black people who were aware of white supremacy who would question the white Jesus. Now you have people who may still practice Christianity or, one of those three main religions, but they may look at it from a different perspective and won't so much mind as touching on the topic of Egypt or Kemet, even though it doesn't leave any credence or credit to the people of Kemet. The concepts itself, I think have become more mainstream and more acceptable to talk about now, and being able to use the film as a reference point because of all of the imagery in the film. But I don't think it's to be taken as a gospel, and I don't think it's something that we should look to direct us as black people who understand white supremacy. I think it's just a tool, like I said, for other white people to talk to other white people about their hatred for everybody else.
Tater Pie had the best quotable of the evening. She said, Tater Pie, she said, The film supports racism and white supremacy. The end. No further comments needed. Replace white supremacy with justice. I said that is that's really all that needs to be said about it. It's really like, if they want details, you can give them specific examples of things. Make sure you use that image of the white woman with the non-white child. I think that's a good one. And the omission of Cynthia McKinney, I think that's also very important. She did a lot of work spearheading, really. She was one of the first people talking publicly about, suspicious activity around the explosions, so-called terrorist strikes on 9/11, and they did not include anything about her work at all. And I think there are other things you can pick out as well, but supports racism, white supremacy, the end.
So what does
and confusion.
What does justice look like?
What does justice look like?
Right.
People not being mistreated. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Doug, I was waiting for your answer. I'm sorry.
You said, what would justice look like? And then...
Well, we replace white supremacy with justice. What would that look like? What would that mean for us?
People not being mistreated, people being able to thrive. And for me, that means being able, anything that I conceive of that is constructive, there's nothing that would stop me from doing all that I can to achieve those goals, like to just go out and get things done that are constructive and getting help, not being afraid, having just resources to really be able to thrive. That would just be for starters. It would be a radically different environment. Oh my God. Justice would mean I would never have to see what just flashed on the television screen right now. I'm getting an advertisement for Big Mamas with not one but two black males in dresses. I would never have to see this again, ever. Justice would look like that. The images would be of black fathers, not in dresses, but black fathers with their child at the park or doing at the library, something constructive, the beach. Black fathers, that's what I'd be seeing. That's the images that I would be seeing in front of me, not black males in a dress.
Justice would be no more black men getting hung for being black. Drag behind trucks.
Frederick Jermaine Carter.
Exactly. Or shot 50, 40, 30 times, No more of that. That would be justice.
It's not just black men being dragged from the back of trucks. There was a woman earlier this year in Texas. Same thing.
Really?
Yes. And the report said that she and this white guy, they were going to do drugs or were looking to score drugs, and they had an argument. And I believe he beat her first and then dragged her. So black women aren't safe.
Oh, of course. I never even heard of that case.
Wow, really?
I heard someone earlier speak of religion and the astrology in the Zeitgeist movie. And I want to know, is astrology used against non-white people in a negative way? I ask that question because in the Black Southern Church, they teach against astrology, and that's where my question comes from.
I think it can be. I think that if you understand, NASA is not just exploring the universe, just to be exploring the universe. I think that the Earth, the water, the moon, the different planets, the alignments, the stars, all of that has an impact on Earth and Earthlings. And I think with black people being conditioned to look at natural celestial phenomena as evil or wicked, allows people who are more open-minded or who have access to science to pull on those energies. And like you said, in the South, that's just one way of showing you how it's used against us, is by telling us not to look at it or not to be interested in it, or it's passé, or it's not, it's nothing. It's something to be afraid of, or it's wicked, but it's all part of our being because it's something that, like we just had this lunar eclipse. It was phenomenal, not just to the site, but it had to have an impact on the environment of the Earth because of how the moon and the Earth align. And I think as long as black people continue to look at these things as outside of ourselves or something wicked, then yes, anybody who has knowledge of something you don't have knowledge of, it can be used against you. I think it was Ronald Reagan who had an astrologer in-house, and he really didn't make too many moves unless he talked with this astrologer. I'm not saying that it's the end-all or be-all of all things, but I think it's something that should be investigated and, to an extent discussed and used if the knowledge is available. But I wanted to add, too, I hear under the context of white supremacy, the justice would mean that we wouldn't suffer from white supremacists killing us. But, I just have to emphasize that we also have black people who work on the behalf of white supremacy. In L.A., you have what they're calling the grim sleepers, and in Cleveland, you had the man who was killing sisters, 20 and 30 in L.A., and I think it was 10 in Cleveland, and there's a few others that's coming up. How do we, once we get rid of the white supremacist power structure, how do we deal with black people who are still, wearing a dress, still deciding to kill each other, even in parts of Africa where you have the military domination, even though they're working for T-Mobile and Dell Computers to get those resources, it's usually a black person who's in charge of that army who's forcing those children to be child soldiers or who's conducting those rape raids. Is our view of justice also to get them in check so that they understand, that white supremacy is not just, white people being supreme, but it's created a sub-power structure within our own race where we oppress each other? There's people who will sell. There's people who will get a paycheck, who will engage in these type of discussions, who will get get us excited and whatnot. Turn us one against another and get paid for that, being black by white people. Is that, how do we deal with them with justice once we get rid of white supremacists saying that they're black?
Oh, that sounds like backbiting for white supremacy, so that would just go. Once we end it, that will go. No more snitching for white people. White supremacy wouldn't be there.
One thing I wanted to mention about Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project, he looks like he's non-white. And I don't know if he is or not, but if he is, or if he's denying that he is non-white, how does that affect his ideas of the future?
Well, it seems, I probably won't answer your question, but it seems to me that what gives him the right to state what he thinks the future should be. Like, I don't even care if his idea was in alignment with what I felt the future should be, or if it was in accordance to popular consensus of what the future should be. What gives him the right to just start a movement and decide what he thinks the future should be for peoples of the earth? I mean, that connects directly to what the problem is. Trying to have, I guess you could say, sovereign power over other people's lives and how they live them. And I think that's generally the problem I have. Hey, if you want to go have a utopia, you build your own perfect house on your own perfect island, and drive on with it. Well, what gives him and any of the other scientists or social engineers that he hang out with the right to influence what anybody's future is going to look like? I seriously have a problem with that.
So where do the ideas for the future come from if not necessarily jobs, but just say non-white people? Don't we have to have input from somewhere in how to move forward?
I guess if it was justice, then yeah, but I mean, I don't even see where we have much of an input in a lot of important world decisions, especially decisions that affect our well-being.
So where do we start as non-white? What do we do?
I think black people. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I don't know.
I was just going to say, I think black people have had all the resources in the world given to us. Marcus Garvey's teachings, I mean, he just laid out the fundamentals of what our future should be and how to get there. We often talk about Dr. Francis Cress Wellsing and Brother Neely Fuller and their impact and their teachings and, how to look at the world and how to deal with coping with it. You got Dr. Amos Wilson and the Blueprint for Black Power, Dr. Asa Hilliard, Dr. John Henry Clark, all of these phenomenal teachers. We should not look to an Aldous Huxley in The Brave New World or 1984 or who else are some of those people, L. Ron Hubbard. We should not look to these scientific New Age writers that white people are looking to. Because their plight is not ours. I think that the reason why we are in such flux is because we don't use the resources that we have been given through those elders and those ancestors. It seems like we're always trying to rewrite the paradigm. We're always trying to rebuild the wheel with a square. Whereas if we went into those books and dealt with some of those concepts, just within our community, not even on the world stage, but just within our own community and within our own selves and our daily habits and our lifestyles, I think we would have less dependence on them economically and morally and socially, etc. And we would have more power to say what we're not going to accept as victims, or we would have more powers not to be victimized in every stratagem. But, for some reason, I like Brother Al Sharpton and the fact that he's created a platform for himself. But, you have Al Sharpton working for the White House under the Obama administration. There's not going to be a lot of outcry for injustice unless it's to benefit the president of a white supremacist country. You have a black president now. There's no there's no real room for us to say, how that benefits black people. The only thing we see now is a black face, and any criticism of the president is deemed as being anti-racial towards black people. But I think we've been given a variety of warrior teachers and scholars. We just don't adhere.
There's a consensus among white folk that's unspoken. They work in the favor of white folk. That is not the case with non-whites. And I recently listened to Mr. Leo Muhammad at the C.O.W.S show, and one thing he said is that non-whites have to understand the people that we're confronting, the beast, white folk. He said that we have to accept that their nature is not to do the right things. So with that in mind, if we do what we need to do, will that change white supremacy, even if we follow all of the people you just mentioned?
This is Gus. My answer, I think she wanted the question repeated.
Please.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, sis. I'm sorry.
Could we get the question repeated?
Well, I was relating if we non-white folk do what we need to bring ourselves up. And according to Mr. Leo Muhammad from your interview with him, he stated that we must remember that white folks' nature is not to do the right things. So even if we do what we have to do in order to bring ourselves up, will it change white supremacy?
I think white supremacy is the white people who practice racism, white supremacy, racist man and racist woman, they are going to alter what they do in response to their victims if they see us changing things. So I think if non-white people, if a significant number of non-white people began to change the way they think, speak, and act in an effort to counter white supremacy, yes, I think that would change the system. White people would change it. I think the goal for us should be not to conform to all the teachings of Mr. Fuller or Dr. Welsing or Elijah Muhammad or anybody else, but to conform to what's going to eradicate white supremacy. It might have been that all of those people got it wrong. We might have to come up with something totally new and different. It might be that nobody has come up with anything that, and that might be true. The evidence would support that. Nobody has come up with anything that is going to deal with adequately racism, white supremacy. So, it might not be in those books. Not saying that that's not a good start, but just saying we might have to think of something totally new. So the goal should be, I would hope, doing everything we need to do in terms of modifying our behavior, what we think, do, and say, so that we totally destroy our opponent's ability to practice racism, white supremacy, and that's white people.
So you correct me if I'm wrong. What that means, and I think this kind of ties in straight, nicely with Zeitgeist. They were saying that white people, they didn't specify white people, but they said the people who are in power, that they're ready to go along with and support the current situation on the planet. And so it sounds like you're saying, Gus, that non-white people, and from my observation, we're typically raised to serve white people or to, go along with whatever ideas they have because we are deceived into thinking that they have our best interests in mind. So we have to directly think about that and figure out how to stop serving white people, which you have to figure out how to do that in your own life and consciously have an effort to undermine the infrastructure of white supremacy, which is the white people that's walking around everywhere. I could be wrong. Were you meaning something else with that? Gus?
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Can I be heard? Oh, okay.
I can hear you.
If I'm okay, thank you. If I'm correctly understanding, yes, correcting, adjusting our thought, speech, and action to counter the regular white people that you're around every day, what they are doing to erode the system, to erode what they're doing. Yes. And yes, we have non-white people. Yes, we have been totally conditioned, programmed to support white people. Look at our behavior today. All of you who are around other non-white people who participate in, the holiday, we have been programmed to do that.
Can I be heard on that? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
we can
I
hear you.
can hear you. I was going to mention China. China, even though there's 52 different ethnicities within the Chinese people, and they function under white supremacy and their capitalist system, true. But it was Mao Zedong who shut down China for a period of time to create the type of communist rule over the people so that they could have more power within the power of white supremacy so that they're not necessarily subservient to the rule of white people. And today China is a big ally, even though they're functioning, again, from a system of white supremacy as scavengers of resources in Africa, but they've become a big ally to Africa. President Mugabe in Zimbabwe, I think he just brokered a multi-billion-dollar deal with China so that their monetary system is backed by the Chinese. But at the same time, there is racism that exists within the 52 ethnicities of the Chinese people, and there's racism that exists Chinese people against African people, because when Africans go to China and they try to set up the same type of trade and commerce that Chinese people set up in Africa, they're discriminated against, they're deported at earlier times, they're taxed heavily, they're harassed, et cetera, et cetera. But I bring up China because I feel that China used a Maoist philosophy of Chinese nationalism that and Confucianism that subverted the white supremacy structure so the Chinese people began to see themselves on an equal footing. And today they're an economic, threat. They're the ones that the United States, when they go to print their money, they have to go in debt to China. So I don't think that it's beyond the scope of reason. It's just like if you're in a desert, and you know that there's mosquitoes out there, you'll put on mosquito repellent. Or if you know that there is a snake in the grass, and you're walking around barefoot, you would be careful where you walk, especially if you don't have an antidote to the snake bite. think that's kind of where we are as black people. You know, we're walking around barefoot, and we know that there's snakes, and we can't be mad at the snake for being a snake and biting us. You know, we just have to take the proper precautions to protect ourselves.
Tater Pie, she said she didn't think it was correct to label it racism if a non-white person is mistreating another non-white person. You said the so-called Chinese people were mistreating Africans and even non-white people who are Chinese. You said 52 different ethnicities. These different non-white people are mistreating each other. She said she didn't think that was racism, white supremacy. I do think the system of white supremacy conditions non-white people to be in conflict with one another. I try to make sure I point that out consistently. White people are most to blame for that. And I think definitely the non-white people in the area of the world known as China are definitely subject to racism, white supremacy. I believe you can be a white person and be rented there and be paid lots of money to just pretend that you work for the company. That right there says a lot about racism, white supremacy to me.
This is Nanny. Good night, everyone. I have to give way to technology. My battery is dead. Take care, and this has been a great discussion. And Happy New Year.
Thank you for sure. Thank you for participating.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Right on. Did anyone watch this film with a white person?
I'm going to have to. No.
Did I interrupt someone?
No, but I was just listening to you.
Oh, that's crazy. I had white people. I said that on the previous show. We had white people running to watch this film with myself and back of the bus. Like, I remember that vividly. They wanted to talk about it and you know, analyze it, deconstruct every second of it. They changed completely when we began focusing on white supremacy. But as long as we were on Zeitgeist, you know, it was all good.
I think I remember that show. I believe you said they started a rumor that you were in a homosexual cult or something like that.
Oh wow.
Something crazy like that.
Yeah, that was that was once we put Zeitgeist down and got on white supremacy, then we became gay homosexual cult leaders.
Okay.
Was that the white community saying that?
It was rumored from white people, so yes, from the white community, they began saying that. Like I said, we watched Zeitgeist together. We watched this, you know, took notes on it. I could have got a free copy, and they wanted to hear what I had to say about it, you know, white validation.
Mhm. Yeah, that white validation means a lot to us. I mean, you see the comments sometimes where black people are arguing. It's not about race. We're all under oppression by the elite and da-da-da-da. Even though black people who have money still get mistreated based on color, even if they have the same amount of money as the white person is. It's ridiculous.
Not believe that people are consciously aware that non-white people have been conditioned to that have been conditioned to have a high desire for white people to think they are okay.
I'm sorry, you kind of broke up in the beginning.
I was saying, does anyone believe that that white people are not consciously aware that non-white people have been conditioned to think to have a high desire to feel that white people think that they are okay, to think that the non-white person is okay?
I think they're consciously aware. I think they're consciously aware. I mean, I've been following this show, and look at what happens when it says don't have sex with them. They go off.
And I think that white people are very aware of non-white people that aren't concerned about their validation. They notice that very quickly.
Yes, they move differently when you're not concerned about how you feel about them. I've experienced that dealing with them. I look them straight in the eye, because I remember Cree 7 talking about a show where she wouldn't look this woman in the eye. If you look them in the eye and you hold your stare with them, they move differently. I experienced that on my last job.
Absolutely, and if you won't hang out with them after work or something like that, they take notice of that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do the office parties. I didn't bring my personal business to work, any of that, and they move differently around me.
I've noticed that when you do that, you have some that go out of their way to prove to you that they're okay. You know, that they have had, some hard times, or they go out of their way to speak to you, or, try to make small talk and carry on.
That's my experience.
But I think another problem under the context of white supremacy is the cultural rate. Like nowadays, you got Eminem, the number one rapper. You have all of these white kids who buy hip hop music, who identify as wiggers. And when you come across them and they don't understand why you're not accepting of them, they've embraced their culture, what they deem as your culture, I think that presents another problem too. And how we have allowed ourselves to define our culture.
I wanted to share, talking about if white people are aware of the confusion that non-white people suffer from, and wanting that white person to like us, that white validation. Farrell Winfrey, admitted racist white supremacist. She's been on this program twice, and she's been on. She did a program on Mr. Edward Williams, the Counter Racism Radio Network. She's quoted as saying, she's talking about white people, we know what we've done to you, non-white people, and we know what we've put in your head over 500 years. We know how to utilize that. We know how to take advantage of that. We even know how to have a non-white black friend. We know the dynamics of who is in control. We know where your place is. We know where our place is. The greatest deception we've caused is that your people, black people, believe us. We have done such a good job They don't even know that I've done this to them. Oprah Winfrey admitted racist white supremacists. So she could be lying.
No, I agree with her, but I think when a white person come in contact with a non-white person and that person does not act in accordance to that programming, then it's problematic. However, I think a lot of times, with everything we do from A to Z, trying to assimilate, and not everybody wants to go to HBCU. From feeling that we have to go to the top, European Ivy League schools or whatever. The list just goes on and on. I'm even going to throw out relaxing out here. I'm just going to throw that in as a hot spot. Just trying to assimilate and be less ethnic and soften what it means to be, a descendant of Africa, not wanting to connect with people of color throughout the world, and really not understanding how our behavior around white folks or our willingness to just live in communities with each other and not, it's either two things. Either you want to live in a community with others that look just like you, or you make enough money and you feel that a sign of success is moving out of those communities and moving closer to white people. And so I do believe what she said, but I don't think all people are asleep. I don't think all people are asleep.
I ain't never had no white friends.
Because I know, if now I learned from your show to say suspected racist, and I've also learned in my professional career that if you're going to accuse somebody of a racist, which racism is, unless you get in, obviously abuse, racism, even sexism is very hard to prove. However, I find that, if you're the type of person who, shoot straight from the hip, I have a problem with anybody that won't look anybody else in the eye, be it white or black. But, confidence speaks volumes. But, how many different type of Negro behaviors are there? And so, when you're dealing with a suspected racist and they think they may be dealing with what I like to term as a Negro spiritual, because I don't like to say a negative word. But, I found even when I'm working around other African Americans, you may have some that's pretty, peaceful and easygoing who don't want to be confrontational. They always want to be politically correct. And that's because they have a lot at stake. They have a lot at stake in their job. They may not believe in their ability to produce income on their own. And then you have the fiery type who I guess they say the hell with it. I'm just going to, go toe-to-toe with this and whatever happens. And you probably have people from varying degrees that hit each end of the spectrum. But I'm pretty sure it's techniques, just like we sitting here talking about how we deal with suspected white supremacists. It's proven books and, the Willie Lynch papers and all types of other psychological studies that's been done to direct and inform suspected racists on how to behave in any type of black person they may feel they're going to encounter.
What is Negro behavior? What does that mean? Or can you explain that for us? Negro behavior?
Yeah, I can. We watch a lot of TV and we get stereotypes on how we should behave. Everything from the pants sagging to the very articulate African American that may not use what's been termed as ebonics or any other colloquialisms that may be used within our culture. I probably shouldn't have said Negro behavior, but I encounter within my own culture base different ways of handling things, different realities, different ways of identifying oneself with the larger society. Be it if you identify yourself as a grassroots type person or an activist or, hip-hop, urban street, southern hospitality, educated, not educated. I mean, it all depends on how you see yourself, but I find the thing that's most damaging is when we personify images that's been, projected throughout time of who we are. And so that's what I mean. On a broad scale.
Still not really clear. I'm still not really clear about what Negro behavior is. Like, if someone asked me, Gus, you just asked, her to explain what Negro behavior is. Now you should be able to tell me. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Do you think you can take one more swing at it? Negro behavior, like
I'll take another shot at it.
Okay.
I find that different people. Maybe I shouldn't have used the term Negro behavior. Maybe I could have said human behavior. But to me, I tend to interact a lot with other African Americans who may classify themselves as Negroes. And so, I find that different people, based on their understanding and perspective, handle things differently. And different people from different African Americans that I've encountered from different age groups might handle something differently. I find that it's a certain fearlessness with the young generation where they may be more upfront about how they feel, and they may be willing to say, hey, well, you're a racist, you're a suspected racist. But I find when I may encounter somebody that may be from a different generation than I am, they may be a little cautious based on their experience. If I encounter somebody that may classify themselves as a stereotype that they may have encountered in the media, they may behave in that manner. So when you say that the suspected racist white woman said that they already know the program that they put in our heads, and some people behave in a manner that's true to who they think they are, and then you have others that behave in a manner that they've personified based off the media and society. And so that's what I mean by various Negroes' behavior, if I'm making any sense. And so based off of maybe somebody like the lady you was talking about, if you have an instance where they're telling you from the stereotypes on how you behave, who you are today, pants sagging, I'm just keep using that example, and somebody approach you with that stereotype of behavior, exactly, I would think somebody would know exactly how to handle that person based off of their understanding of that stereotype that was put out there that person internalized. And in my opinion, that could be based off experience, or it could be based off of some misunderstanding of some type of information or programming that they've received. Still not making sense. If I'm not, it could be because I'm going to blame it on 12:52 a.m.
Okay. I was going to blame white people. That's what you do. White people are always most to blame. And I was specifically going to blame the white people who produce Zeitgeist because I think it produces a lot of confusion. Like I think you can even be somewhat informed about racism, white supremacy, and it just provides so many different areas for you to get off track. Primarily because they're not talking about racism, white supremacy. They're talking about secret societies and the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission and the Bushes and they're, Horus and Zeus and mythology and Jesus is fake. And I mean, they're talking about everything but white supremacy. They got a clip of Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks and George Carlin, the guy that I think I got his name correct. I might have made an error, but he does all the comedy. He's a white guy. I think he passed away.
Correct, George Carlin.
He does all the stand-up.
That's
right on.
George Carlin.
Thank you. Yeah, he does the stand-up comedy. They got him in Zeitgeist talking crazy, or not talking crazy, but just giving his view that religion and God is foolish. I've heard him do a lot where he's talking pretty honestly about white supremacy and white people. They didn't put that in Zeitgeist. So, yeah, I think it just leads to a lot of confusion. And Tater Pashi said, I'm still confused about Negro behavior. Tater Pie said, if white people are sagging their pants, would that be Negro behavior?
You asking me?
It could be rhetorical. You don't feel compelled to answer. If you would like to answer, go ahead, but don't feel compelled. It can be rhetorical. I even think it would be best as a rhetorical question. So don't feel compelled to answer.
Well, I do think, in my opinion, that since that act has been personified in many aspects of our society to be inner city Negro and also hip hop phenomenon, I think that it would be seen as a Negro behavior to some people. Even though we all know that you have suburban kids, sagging their pants also. But yeah, I think a lot of people would see it as that. And I'm gonna go ahead and blame it on white supremacists.
Mhm. Because if I can add on to that, when you look back through our history, through our us being over here, when you look back at blues, when you look back at jazz, when you look back at bebop, when you look back, at disco. When you look back at Motown, we were the trendsetters. It was our culture that the masses, regardless of who they were, identified with. And over time, after we shifted because of, white people coming into these cultures and identifying with them, we'd switch it up. They would come back. Just like when we got the Jerry curl, they got the afro. When we got hip hop, they had finally got R&B. And even today, you can't really find too many young black people who are familiar with B.B. King, who are familiar with blues, who are familiar with, bebop, and the culture that came with it, the jitterbug and the zoot suits and all of that. And I would say, culturally, that is an identification for black people. Those are things that we created. The zoot suit was something that we put on, and it became fashionable. Bebop was something that we did and, became hot. And even today, I don't like Lil Wayne, but I know there are a lot of imitators who are imitating Lil Wayne, white and black. But culturally speaking, he came from black people. And he's supposed to be personifying our culture, or what people deem as our culture.
Under white supremacy.
We're about, 40 seconds away from the end. If you all have anything you want to share, context of white supremacy, we'll be back, I believe, Wednesday. Peter Tatchell finally keeps getting rescheduled, but I think it's going down Wednesday the 29th. Peter Tatchell, all the homosexuality and such that you can stand. Do not watch Zeitgeist. It just spreads confusion. That's my final verdict. Zeitgeist spreads a lot of confusion. You have to really wait until you're very informed about racism and white supremacy, because it'll put you off in la-la land. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Anything you all want to share? Go now. Go quickly.
Thank you for creating the show.
Yes, it's been helpful.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Good night.
You all too. Tater Tot is the best. Yay.